Thank you so much for joining and welcome back. I am really excited because this is our first C-Suite Coach Chat of the year, and we have the most exciting topic to get it kicked off with. A huge thank you to our partners at New York Urban League. Sandra Garcia, thank you for putting this together and coordinating this effort with us. It's really important that we have time and space to have these thought-provoking conversations around what's needed in the workplace today. And with that, let me make sure I introduce myself. I'm Angelina Darasaw, the founder and CEO of C-Suite Coach, and we work with companies as an organizational development consultancy to build more trusted workplaces and other community destinations. Really excited that we've celebrated 10 years of being in business last year, and a big piece of that has been figuring out how to build a collaborative culture, which is what we're here to talk about today in our C-Suite Coach Chat with New York Urban League. We have a great group of panelists to introduce you to today, and I'll kick it off by first introducing Janae Desiree. Janae Desiree is an experienced creative producer who has worked in unscripted and narrative TV and film, as well as animation. Currently, Janae is a director of development at Universal Content Productions, a division of the Universal Television Entertainment Group umbrella at NBC Universal. As a Haitian and African-American woman, Janae's mission is to amplify diverse and inclusive stories that will entertain and inspire culture. As a producer, Janae views herself as a collaborator, a champion of ideas, and aims to empower creatives to show up as their full selves. Her mission is to also make sure that the stories entertain and inspire culture. She began her career at Radical Media and ABC News All Media. She's also worked with the likes of Participant Media by Ava DuVernay and has had a really exciting career in film and television. In addition to that, she also is a trained dancer, a graduate of LaGuardia High School of Music Art and Performing Arts, and began her undergraduate studies at Clark Atlanta before moving on to Rutgers in New Jersey, where she earned a degree in communications and a double minor in Africana Studies and Women and Gender Studies. Thank you for being here, Janae.
Thanks for having me.
And on the side, as you all know, when we have these conversations, we love to feature an executive and also an executive coach so we can hear both of those perspectives. And I'm thrilled that the executive coach we have with us today is Cheryl Mills. Cheryl Mills is an ICF certified executive and leadership coach with over 25 years of experiences as a senior leader in financial services. She's led large teams, launched complex wealth management platforms, and built new product management functions in both the US and the UK for firms including BNY Mellon, Broadridge Financial Solutions, and Pershing LLC. Her career was defined by navigating high-stakes environments, driving strategic change, and delivering measurable business results, which is experience that she now brings to her coaching. Today, Cheryl works with executive and senior leaders to strengthen leadership skills, navigate complex business landscapes, and step confidently into roles of greater impact. She also partners with organizations on targeted coaching engagements, bringing tailored assessments, clear goals, and practical action plans to accelerate leader readiness, improve cross-functional effectiveness, and deliver sustained results. And I'm proud to say that Cheryl Mills is one of the coaches in our C-Suite Coach Network. Thank you for being with us, Cheryl.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Okay, I am excited to dive into this conversation because building a collaborative culture is certainly something that is not as easy as it sounds. It may, when we hear that, when we think of that, we may think, let's have the ping pong table and let's make sure that there are snacks available, but we know that that's not all that it takes. So I'd like to kick it off first with Janae and then hear from you, Cheryl. When you hear building a collaborative workplace culture, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And if you could touch on just one tangible piece that needs to be in the fabric of that culture. Thank you, Janae.
The first thing I think about when building a collaborative culture in the workplace is everyone feeling like they have a place at the table. I think offline you mentioned something about trust, and I do think everyone having a place of trust to be able to share ideas, not only share ideas, but to have ideas be heard is really how you, I think, start building a collaborative workplace culture. If people are feeling siloed or that they don't have a place to actually share their ideas and be able to collaborate with people, bounce ideas off of, they're never going to feel like they are a part of the team. And I think when you have employees feel like that, I think it's hard to actually get out of that cycle. So I would say trust and a true place at the table.
I like that, Janae. I like that description of a collaborative environment. I agree. Trust underpins the whole thing. I don't think it exists in any kind of relationship. We're talking about, professional ones today, but I don't think it works in any kind of relationship if the trust isn't there. In a workplace, I think you can tell if there's good collaboration between, on the one hand, I think you can feel it. But tangibly, I think you can see it as it relates to people being able to speak up and having their voice heard. People being able to ask questions and get answers as opposed to, well, that's just what they decided at the top. But actually, let's talk about it and things. I think you could feel collaboration, feel it as well as see it. And Angelina, if I may, I do have one specific thing that I think people could do. If you're in a position, if you're managing people and you want to increase the sense of collaboration within your group, a suggestion that I have is to narrate your decision making. Tell your team why you're making the decisions that you're making. So, for example, you could do it tomorrow. So it's not a big thing. It's just something it's a small thing that you can do all the time. So if you're changing a prioritization or if a deadline is moving, if a goal has been tweaked in some way, share with the team why that happened. Let them know that they were considered. The impact on them was taken into account. I mean, I hear people tell me in coaching, I don't need to be a part of every decision, but I want to know that I was considered. I want to know that my contribution or what I do was taken into account. So that's what I would start off with for a manager, is to narrate your decision making.
I'm really glad you shared that tidbit, Cheryl, because one of the things that may prevent some managers from taking that step is really feeling the pressure to move at a fast pace. And that is something that we're hearing from a lot of clients. I'm even hearing just from colleagues and friends in business, is there's pressure. We have to move fast. We have to have year over year growth, quarter over quarter growth. And sometimes it can feel like there's not an ROI in taking the time out to build that collaborative culture. So I would love to hear from you first, Cheryl, and then Janae. What is the ROI in taking the time to do that? Does it slow business down? Can we still produce as we put in those efforts?
I like that, because I imagine that's a real concern for managers. So it's good that you highlight it. I will reiterate that I don't think it has to take a lot of time. I don't think it has to be, kind of happy hour once a week. I don't think it has to be, team meetings that go on for 2 hours at a time. Those things have their place, but I think consistency matters. I think narrating, like I said, narrating even small things, it's almost like the consistency of saying hey, I know why my boss chose to do whatever it is she chose to do. Like that, I think that matters as much as anything else. In terms of the return on investment, because I think it can be small actions. It doesn't have to be quarterly offsites necessarily. Because it could be small actions, hopefully they're verbal, but maybe they're coming across in email or on Slack. If those things happen, I think that they don't take a lot of effort, and they are the value is really great. I think the absence of doing those things is where you get into destructive, I don't know what the opposite of return on investment is, but whatever the negative of that, you get negative return, I guess is what it would be. I think in the absence of doing those things is far more expensive, far more detrimental to the team dynamic.
I would have to agree with Cheryl. I think the first thing I think about is not how many meetings or how long those meetings are. I actually think having a lot of meetings or focusing on a long offsite for a lot of over a long period of time could actually be more detrimental than the small actions and the small conversations that are taking place in the office in between projects. I look at my industry in particular, and I think return on investment is it really everything for us is about time and money and time and how fast things can move. No person has the right answer, but I think the best way things really happen and when return on investment really you're able to see that is when you're making decisions, making a lot of smaller decisions, not in a silo, but as a group. I'm using I like to call board of directors, the person that's in casting, the person that's in, business affairs, so that we are all coming with our business acumen, all coming with our skill set to actually make these business decisions and creative decisions in a really meaningful way so that we can get to the show getting green light, so that we can get to being on set. That's how that return of investment, I think, really happens when people start to, have the same meeting. Meetings are important, but I sometimes think these smaller breakouts and one-to-one conversations is really where you see real actionable things. I tend to look at meetings sometimes to just be updates and not really where meaningful work is being done. Once you move outside of that boardroom meeting and it's smaller, I think those are where the real things and the real magic, let's say, happens, to where you're going to see the return on the investment of the time that you've been putting in, and that smaller time is more meaningful time.
Thank you for that. And something that you both just hit on is the importance of these smaller actions happening with consistency. And that leads me to think that building this culture isn't a one-time event. It's not, I can check off the box and say I have the offsite. But frequently, one of the things that might happen is we are trying to build the culture as a team. And I even heard someone say in the room with us today, they're making efforts to build that culture. Where do we get started? And especially knowing that everyone is coming in with different past experiences and expectations of what work should be. How do we then get started aligning on those expectations so it can create that room for collaboration? And Janae, I'll start with you.
I do think offsites are meaningful, and I think it's a way we can come together and say, this is what our goals are. This is what these are our blind spots. These are the things that we want to change. That's important. And I think once you leave that, there's something I think Cheryl said earlier. A lot of times, that offsite is a place where the entire team feels heard and seen. But once you leave that room, if everything goes back to just relying on those in the leadership positions, the managers, the big decision makers, all of that work that we took in that day offsite, it goes by the wayside, because now I may feel, or my team may feel like they're not heard. So again, I think the thing that we have to do and shift, a lot of it is leadership. Anyone in that position where you have someone who, if you're ahead of a team, is you demonstrate the shift. You demonstrate what you want by you shifting. And I think that is to some of the conversation we had earlier, is being transparent about decision making, is allowing people to observe things, even if they're not making the decisions, understanding why the decisions are being made. I think, that's the only way a full team is going to feel like the culture is being shifted to where we're not just saying it, we're doing it. When you move out of this room and my leader is coming to me and saying, I have this big decision to make on this, and I want to maybe pool the room as to the different ideas. Now, at the end of the day, I'm going to make that decision. But I think if I feel like I have a space to share my perspective, to understand different perspectives and opinions, it's not only going to make me feel like I'm a part of the team, but it's also going to help me be a better business person. And I think the whole goal in any business is that everyone should be going towards the same goal. But if I feel like I'm stuck, we're not going there together, and the culture is never going to shift. So those are the things that I think we can take once we have these meetings and move forward. Is the action has got to move, but I think a lot of that has to stem with the leadership and us shifting our perspective and how we're engaging with our teams.
And Cheryl, if you could dive in a bit more on just the point of what if I'm coming in and my past experience is at work have been dreadful and have made it hard for me to trust. How do I, as a member of the team, start to shift my perspective so that I can embrace more of the efforts that are being made to create that collaboration?
Yeah. My advice to someone would be to give this place a shot. So in this, let me collect my thoughts on that. I would give it a shot. I would start with my boss. And so try to have in our one-on-ones, bring about conversation that could be collaborative. If your boss isn't starting it with you, try to start it with them. Same thing with all of your teammates, the other departments. Start with yourself, extend yourself. More times than not, I think you'll get a response back that people engage with us the way that we engage with them. So I think that will get reciprocity in that way. And then, you go from there. So hopefully you'll have some new data points. Hopefully you'll have some proof points that this isn't like the culture I left previously. But I think in order to have a new experience, the employee is going to have to start with themselves. They're going to have to take the reins on that.
And then similarly, when you're coaching people leaders, Cheryl, which I know is a big part of your practice, working with managers, have you come across managers who are maybe dealing with some of their team members who are not leaning into the collaborative efforts? How do you help them through that and help them figure out how to manage those situations?
Yeah. Yes, it comes up. It comes up on both sides. The employees say it's not collaborative here, and managers say it's not collaborative here. So everybody most people can recognize it. For leaders, I tell them the same thing I just said to an employee, is to take the lead. Like my advice to everybody is take the lead. Let it start with you. So and it's even more important from the leader, right? Like it starts from the top down. They cast the temperature that's there, the culture that's there. If the leader is asking questions and listening to the answers, they're setting the tone for, hey, this is how work happens within my team, within my department. So it doesn't sound entirely different from the advice that I would give to an employee, but I would ask them or suggest to them that they start with them, that they become proactive. That comment from before I made about narrate your leadership, bring people in. I think that's how a leader could get started.
Thank you. And Janae, similarly, you've worked in a range of different sizes of companies, from large corporations to scaling startups, and have experienced a lot of different types of culture. And I would love to hear from you, what are some of the systems? So we talked about some of those micro decisions that happen on a daily basis that start to embed culture, but then there also needs to be systems in place to reinforce that. What are some of the systems you've seen work really well to create that sense of collaboration?
I think in terms of systems, everyone has a performance review. Doesn't matter what size the company is, there's a performance review. But I do think how those performance reviews are executed from the top down is actually what makes a big difference for employees and team members. It's funny, I just submitted mine on Friday. So this is very top of mind. But I think, we're framing it not just about what you have done. I think we're framing it to team impact. I think lets you start thinking about it outside of just the direct relationship between my job and my boss having to look at this. I think, looking at it from a knowledge sharing aspect, I think those things, again, make it feel more collaborative than this is what I wanted. These are my goals. It's how we're working together as a team. I also think even if there are performance reviews that can maybe be across, where you are not like a 360, but I think in a way where you can have a perspective coming in from a colleague or that'll help you get a different perspective. The aspects of the job that I need help with, the things that I want to be doing that may be outside of my realm, but are more so about the growth of the team, the growth of the business, I think is really helpful. I think meeting structures and workflows should also, the process of those should also change. Like I'm someone who, I am a believer that it could have been an email, but I also I also understand the importance of real life interaction. But I think how we are using that meeting, how we're using these meetings, again, not just for updates, for actual, look, everyone knows what's going on, big picture. What are the problems that we need to solve? Can we come together here? And so it's not just an email, so that we're hearing each other, we're having conversations about it to make things move. In my business and a lot of businesses, I think sometimes we're just like, we got to get through. But I feel like if you are so focused on getting this off the table to get to the next thing, it actually takes away the joy of working at a company where you don't work by yourself. I feel like these little small things of how we're using performance reviews, how we're using team meetings, are just little things that I think can help teams and members of teams feel like I'm working in a collaborative environment where I am not just a peg in a hole that's going to be moved. I'm actually me. I'm collaborating and I'm bringing something to this team. Angelina's bringing something, Cheryl is, and our efforts can be shown and seen in real time of us coming together.
Thank you for that. That's really, really powerful. And it makes me think also, it brings back something that Cheryl shared. I love that you talked also about this theme of what you would tell a people manager is similar to what you would tell an individual contributor, which is we all have this onus of our own actions and we can all take the lead. And that is really important, especially in a cross-generational workplace. And that's a big theme that we explore a lot at C-Suite Coach is how do we build relationships across generations where everyone feels that they're valued and have that ability to have input. When you think about it from that lens of the cross-generational functions in work today, any other thoughts of how, especially for that junior person that wants to feel safe to say, I can raise my hand and be the leader, how can they build up that confidence?
I like that. Yeah, it's a tricky one. The generational, the multi-generational workplace is challenging. And so for a junior person who was feeling like somehow that their voice wasn't heard or that their contribution hasn't been seen, I would challenge them to speak up. I would challenge them to prepare before they get in the room, like prepare, like today I'm going to add in this message. When that topic comes up, I'm going to ask this question and give my perspective on it. I would challenge the employee, particularly if they're earlier in their career, to find the spots where they feel like they have something to say, because you're going to come with confidence. If you feel like, hey, I really know this spot, you're going to have a little more confidence. You sit up a little straighter, which is helpful. I think also a person can engage probably, but not necessarily, the people who are of a older generation, or probably potentially more senior. I think that there's a way to engage them as well, collaboratively, asking for insight, asking for perspective. So not necessarily asking for questions and answers, like tit for tat. I have this question, you have this answer. I have this question, you have this answer. But more like, coming out of that meeting, I wanted to learn more about why we decided that we were going to go with this vendor. Like something that is a bit opens up conversation, opens up more than just like tactical and just kind of back and forth kind of a thing. Really becomes a conversation. So I think that that's something also that a newer employee or a different generation can think about when they're thinking of people who are older or more senior, is transition from question and answer to conversations.
Mm. Thank you. And on the note of conversations, Janae, you also talked about how powerful the conversations are, that like the meeting outside the meeting, right? The conversations that where we're really unpacking after we've had the big strategy meeting together. In these hybrid environments, which a lot of companies are in right now, how do you have those meetings outside the meeting? How do you create the opportunities to have those strategic conversations while working hybrid?
Yeah, I think, we, for instance, just went into the office for 4 out of the 5 days after being 3 days for the last several years. I will say for us, a lot of the industry has pivoted to hybrid. So a lot of meetings, it's just easier that way. But I think, again, even if you're working in a hybrid situation where there are 10 people on this call and we're all strategizing, I think taking a step back out once you leave that, I think having a smaller Zoom or Google Meet where it's a smaller group, a breakout groups, let's say, of, these folks we're going to be tasked with doing this. We're going to be looking at it from this perspective and we can come back together, I think is a really productive way of doing things when you don't have as many person to person communication. But I also think old school picking up the phone and having a conversation with someone is really helpful. Not everything. Although I did say it could have been an email, sometimes you want to have a conversation with someone again on the phone so they can hear you, and there may be some things you don't want to put in an email or some things that may get lost in translation in an email. So even if we're in this hybrid, I can pick up the phone and say, Lisa, we just got off of this meeting. I'm struggling. I need to strategize. Can you and I have 10-15 minutes to figure this out without the whole collective group? And then we can come back and present something that is actually actionable. I think is helpful. But the idea again is not the collaboration. I think starts when people really feel like they have a place and a space to share and hear information. And sometimes in these bigger rooms, that's not where it is. So to Cheryl's point, if you're a junior person, asking these conversations that open up, asking questions that open up conversations, or if you're on a team and just saying, you know what, I like this person's perspective. I want to talk to them on the side so I can figure out maybe a plan. They can help me. We can help each other figure out how to move forward for the business.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also in the chat, I saw, let's think about reframing performance reviews as team impact reports. So going on what we were chatting about earlier, I love this. And I also see initiating quick huddles. That's something we can do, request them or initiate them. That's great feedback. Now, this is great. Everything I'm hearing, I'm like, yes, why are there any issues at work at all, right? We have all the answers. It's in the micro decisions, it's in narrating the decisions and the huddles and all of the things. But yet we still see a lot of employees feeling disengaged with work, feeling that they're not heard, that they lack trust with their companies. What are some of the red flags that you all have seen that, especially if you're in that place where you're interviewing or looking to change teams, that you can keep an eye out for to make sure that you don't fall into a trap of being in a non-collaborative culture?
That's interesting. I'll speak to that. I think one way that you can tell, certainly if while you're still in your department, if you're in a collaborative place, I believe strongly in your gut, like there's a feeling that am I safe here? Is there trust here? I think if you decide, I'm a step before interviewing in other departments, a step before you get there, I think one of the ways that you can test that is to engage your manager in trying to make those conversations different than they are right now. So for example, if you're feeling like the conversations between you and your manager they're tactical, they're updates, the date changed, we're going to move left, like right, it's just absolutely just, these are the stats, we're passing things. Probably if you're doing one-on-ones that could have been an email, that to me, that indicates that there isn't collaboration going on, there isn't real conversation going on. And one way to test, hey, is your manager open to that? Can I bring it back to a place where we are partnering with one another, is to ask your manager for insight, ask them for input, figure out how can I go about bringing them into conversation? So, we've heard, don't ask close-ended questions, and think about asking your manager something like, that's a close-ended question. Um, I, but maybe it breaks the rule, but it's okay. Ask your manager to give you feedback on something. So if you say, I've been working on executive presence, and we have that cross-functional meeting coming up on Monday. I'd love to get your feedback afterward on your how you feel the meeting went, how you feel my presentation went. That conversation about your presentation and did you or did you not bring forward executive presence, that's a conversation, right? So it goes away from the stats and the deadlines and the tactics. It really becomes more you're bringing your manager, or attempting to bring your manager into your professional development, but also creating spaces where this is beyond just the work. We're moving into collaboration. This is the kind of thing you could kind of tell from their response. Is this a place, maybe we're just going through a busy time. It's not necessarily that I need to give up on this department yet. Maybe there's a way to kind of bring this back around to where we're more engaged with one another. Another example could be, I've just, regarding that client issue, I've decided that I'm going to do X about Y. How does that align with your view? That's a conversation. That's moving away from the tactical. It's moving away from things that aren't strategic and showing that you want to bring about conversation, collaboration. You see the two of you as a team, and that's creating opportunities. Like if your manager's busy or introverted or whatever the case may be, you're creating the place for them to lean in.
That's great. Thank you. Janae, did you have any thoughts on that, on red flags?
I agree with all of that, and I think it's great. So again, it puts the onus in us to it puts the onus in my team to come to me, but also me going to my supervisor to open up the door and not just depend on them. I also think another thing, and people should always do this, whether it's you're looking to change departments within a company or you're looking to go to another company, don't be afraid to ask questions of the people that are there. I think sometimes we do a lot of research on the teams, and we might meet with someone and it feels like a great vibe and, oh, this could be a great fit. But then maybe if you ask a question to another team member, what is it like to collaborate? Asking real specific questions. What is the collaboration like on this team? Do is everything just siloed, or is it just, individualized work, or is it team-based work? I think it's really important because you're really gonna know from those that are working there and seeing their response, and if that place is a good fit for you, and if you want to actually, if it's a best collaborative place for you to go to, whether it's another department or within your company. So, don't just look at the place, don't just, assume and go off of the energy that you feel with someone. Actually do a little bit of recon and research in a professional way, so that you're just information gathering, so you can make the best informed decision.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And what that made me think of is an acronym that we use a lot, which is WAIT. Why am I talking? And as a manager, what I've really learned is collaboration happens when I'm the quietest. And the more I talk, the less I'm able to gain the insights of the people on the team. And so it's been helpful to really stress that for myself even. We do have a question in the chat that I want to address before continuing, and that's, is there a different approach with contract workers on creating culture when there aren't performance reviews? A lot of smaller businesses are very dependent on contract workers and we're also now in the gig economy where most people want to be contractors versus full-time employees, but companies still need to grow. So what has been your experience in seeing successful collaborative cultures come about when there are contracted workers?
I'll start. In my business, I'm at a big corporation, but majority of the business very much is contract work. So whether I'm at this company, I might have a writer, a director, a producer, all of these people that are not, they're not full employees of the company. They're staffed on a show. They're employees of a show. And because the nature of entertainment, the nature of creative spaces, it all has to come with collaboration. So I think a lot of times people, the line producer will go off and do their budgeting. The director will go off and think about shot lists, and the writer is going to be in their room and writing. But I think we still all have to come together at a point and not just do updates, but think about the challenges, think about the information that we're getting, so we can get towards going into production, so that we can go and do post work on a show. So while there are a lot of individual people, the position that I'm in, as a person at a studio who is kind of like the bank, and the person at a network is the kind of like the final sayer of decision maker of all things. There are a lot of other meetings that are happening. You know, I encourage my showrunners, who are the heads of a television show or a director on a film, to collaborate with the rest of their team so that they can make these decisions. So then they come to us, and we're having a collective team. And then me and my team are going to go on the side and have conversations, and the same thing. So no matter as big as the tree goes, everyone at a certain point is having these collaborative spaces where they're doing their work, they're going off on their own, but they are coming together. And I think because we do know that's the only way we're going to make this thing work is if we collaborate. But when there have been times when it has not happened, in the position that I'm in the position that my colleagues are in, it is important to stress the importance of collaboration, and how when we don't collaborate, then we start seeing issues arising, money being spent that shouldn't be spent. And no one wants that. So, you know, naturally for us, it works, but there are a lot of times when it doesn't. Unfortunately, there are times where we have to course correct because collaboration isn't working, and it's so that we can continue on that side. But I think if everyone comes to it, and you setting the stage of, I know that you're a contract worker, or I know that you're on this project, and you might be individualized, but we're going to also collaborate on this together. And that we're not all just individually doing our work. We're all coming together as a team at the end of the day, whether you are a 1099 or a W-2, we're a part of a team. And I think once people understand that, I think they approach things differently.
Definitely. And I'll add on to that, just having at different points, we've had over 50 contractors at a time deployed on different projects that we're working on. So we've been heavily reliant on contract labor. And what I have realized is one of the best ways to create collaboration is to know what people need. And you only get that through feedback. So whether that's directly asking and having platforms to have conversation, or launching feedback surveys, really looking at the results and examining that, discussing it with the takers of the survey, discussing it with others on the team, and figuring out how behaviors should shift to really accommodate that collaboration is huge. Now, let's just say that we're day one, right, of I'm going to try to start a more collaborative culture. I know that there are good results, less is missed. There's a cost to not collaborating. So I want to get started, and I haven't been great at it as a manager. What are some of the first steps I can take to just build in those new habits? I'll start with Cheryl.
Yes. What the first steps that someone can do? I think that there are some tactics, and narrating is one. I think there's something to be said for transparency. Transparency is so closely related to trust. Trust, as we've already talked about, kind of underpins collaboration. If a manager is saying, at this 2025, it was not my best managerial, my best leadership, the team doesn't seem like it's as healthy as it can be, 2026 is here, I'm going to turn over a new leaf. Transparency. Name that. Share with the team, guys, this is how I am reflecting on 2025, of how we worked together, what the engagement was like, and this is what I want it to be in 2026. Like, I'm taking ownership of that because I'm going to do blah blah blah, and what I want from you is blah blah blah. I think there's something to be said for I mean, everybody's an adult. Everybody's an adult, right? So kind of the flashy words and the kind of, a million tactics. How you do something is important. I'm not minimizing that. But just be straight with people, I think, is a great start to trying to turn the tide on something. So that might be where I would advise someone or suggest to someone, like, start there. And
that's really powerful, Cheryl, because often it may sound like a small ask or small action, but that accountability tends to be something that many employees don't feel that they get from their managers. So being able to say, doing the repair and saying, I've messed up before. I haven't earned your trust in the past, but I'm starting anew, and actually naming that is a great way to build that trust. And Janae, any thoughts there? And I have another question from the chat afterwards.
I was going to say the same thing as Cheryl, but I think to add to that, don't just let the top of the year be the only time you have that conversation. It's the continuation of doing that. And I think once the team realizes that, oh, my boss is not just all talk, like there's action in it, like that, they are being transparent with their faults and the things and the desires that they have for the team as well. And then a check in a couple of months later and seeing how have we, reiterating the things that you came back at the top of the year with a new perspective, how we may have fallen short, but the gains that we've done to change that, I think it continues to build the trust, and it positions you as a leader, as not only the leader, but as a connector who, has trust in your team, and your team will in turn have trust in you. So I think continuing to do those throughout the year, so they don't feel it's just lip service, will definitely go a really long way.
That's right. I mean, it's not a one action, which I feel you both have highlighted pretty consistently here. It's not a one-stop shop. It has to be through continued actions. And the question we have in the chat is, what are some low friction ways to celebrate small wins together when we don't share physical office space? So really, again, doubling down on the how do we do this with remote work?
oh, that's good. I don't have anything off the top of my head. Do you have something, Janae?
Well, not that we do this in the office, but I think anyone can do this. Is so we have this thing when we've just closed a deal, we have a little bell, and it's something small, and it's just like whoever had that win has a chance to like ring the bell, right? So, and everyone claps. I don't know if there's a way of doing that remotely if you're in a meeting, but I think, whether there's a Zoom button or whatever that thing is, everyone has their own little bell, acknowledging the win. It for the team is great, but also the individual person who is the lead on that project. I think it makes them feel like I've done something great, not just for myself, but for the team, and we're celebrating. It's just a really good little tiny thing that you can do as a team, and just acknowledge also the wins of others, whether that's, I didn't do that, but I acknowledge that my colleague closed this deal. If they don't say it, I'm going to say it, right? Let's clap, or whatever that thing is for them. It's something so small, low friction, I think, that just celebrates the small things. And again, it makes it feel like, oh, we're here as a team, we're collaborating, we're all in this together. It's not just a nice email you'll get from your boss saying, good job, with no acknowledgement, and no one ever sees it. I think it's important to acknowledge things when we do well in front of others as a team, because the win for you makes me feel like I had a win too.
That's great. We actually had a client, a global retail organization we worked with, where before every training, they asked us to put in a slide called celebrations. And these would be trainings with almost 190 people on, but they would leave 5 minutes prior to launching training and say, please share what you're celebrating. And people shared the personal victories, the professional. And it really did set that tone of, now I'm ready to work because I feel acknowledged and honored here. So that's great. We're getting close to the end. So any final questions, please do throw it in the chat. Okay, we have one now. New York Urban League has a new capacity building initiative for small business owners. Thinking of small business, are there any must-have tools for collaborative brainstorming that don't require a steep learning curve or high monthly cost? Hmm. I think you can accomplish. Oh, go please, Cheryl.
Well, the things that I'm thinking about are so low tech. The things I'm thinking about are pretty low tech. I think Slack, which many offices have, can be a system or a tool for that. Email is an oldie but a goodie. Fewer companies are using it, but it still has value. And intentionality. That's not a system, but I think it is an underpinning of what we've talked about so far today.
Yeah, I would echo that and also echo what Janae shared earlier about just shifting meetings from being less about status reports to more strategy focused. We have done, at this point now, years of constantly evaluating our meeting structure. And that is where a lot of the collaboration happens, when you have that meeting structure set really correctly. And then for both of you, I would like to know if you could give our audience just one piece of non-negotiable advice today, if we're really trying to commit to making sure that we're mastering this in 2026, we're mastering that collaborative culture. What's the one piece, the singular piece of advice that you would share?
Have a conversation. That's non-negotiable. What you can learn in 10 minutes, a 10-minute conversation it can be game changing. It might confirm what you're thinking. It might be new information. Whatever you hear almost doesn't matter. The value is in hearing something. Ask questions, get responses. I'm introverted, so I'm like going to think about it before I have a conversation. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to run it over backwards and forwards and all this kind of stuff. I might wait 2 months, to have a conversation that needs to be had, when 10 minutes, just, engaging someone for 10 minutes, like, hey, can we reflect on this? I want to get your input on this, or the way this went before, I want to share my perspective and hear yours. Have a conversation. It is, I don't know that's mine. To have a conversation.
And that's amazing. That's a great non-negotiable that I'm going to write down. I think I would like to add to that, and I think this is an overarching. There's so many things that can go within this. Is if you're in that leadership role, look for opportunities to help your team and your colleagues. It's not an everyday thing, but it's the small things, whether it's have a conversation. If you are at a bigger company and you see that there is a program, executive accelerator program, maybe nominating them into that, just taking someone out to lunch and wanting to understand what their goals are. I think small little things that you can look to help your team, it makes the members of the team feel seen. And that you have an investment in their growth within the business, and then in turn, they're going to continue to invest in the company. So I think once you show that you want to be helpful in any way, even if it is to ask them what they need help on, I think it just opens the door for the members of your team, and for a fruitful relationship between the two of you or the team moving forward.
Yes, I love this. I couldn't agree more. And I echo what both of you shared. And it also brings me to, I'll share just a quick story that will bring me to my last question for both of you. When you talk about having a conversation, I've learned how important it is not to jump to those conclusions, not to make assumptions about what someone else is thinking, and to really lead with openness, especially in remote work. I remember there was once a meeting with one colleague, and I felt maybe their eyes were shifting from the computer screen. It was a bit different than I'm used to when they normally seem really eager and engaged. And in my mind, I'm having a panic attack because I'm saying, oh, they must be looking for other jobs, or they're checked out, they're not engaged anymore. Like, what happened? It was different yesterday. And I really personalized it. I talked about it with another colleague, and the suggestion was made, just ask. And so I put time on the calendar, and the tone was still a bit sullen. And I just asked, is everything okay? Is everything, how are you? Come to find out, that particular coworker is queer, and was very disturbed by the news of, at that time, potentially removing the right for gay couples to be married, and it was affecting just their overall state of mind. So again, not personalizing things, having the conversation. And that brings me to another really important question, and I think a great one for us to end on. There's so much happening outside in the world outside of us that is impacting how we feel about what's happening in our day-to-day lives, and we carry that when we go to work. What are the best things we can do as team members, whether you're a manager or an individual contributor, to create space for that, not ignore that, but also still find ways to be productive and get the work done? And Cheryl, I see you nodding, so I'll start with you.
I like the idea of asking someone how they're doing, but maybe switching up the question from "How are you?" to something that's a little bit broader. Something that's a little broader, just a little bit different. Because "How are you?" we have this knee-jerk reaction, like, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" "I'm fine." Right? Ask a different question. So you don't want to be invasive or intrusive, but see, a question like, what might I ask someone that is not intrusive? You were out. You told us you were going on vacation. What did you think about Cancun? It's just a different thing. And Angelina, I know you came into this talking about, like, the world is around us can feel topsy-turvy. And given that most colleagues aren't going to start with a very specific question about what's happening in our environment, showing yourself open to something else that's about their life or happening in their world. Vacations, pretty, not too invasive to ask someone about their vacation or a place that they went. It shows your interest. It's different than the "How are you?" thing. I think it stays clear of some of the things you might read in the news and probably wouldn't ask a coworker about their perspective. I think continuing to engage with people, but maybe switch up the question, show that you're interested in them, and it'll go from there. You build rapport and it'll go from there.
I think that's great. I think one thing that I try to do, or I notice we'll do, is if you hear someone mention something like a movie they saw or a book they read, and just in passing, to go back around and bring that up just can be a way of broadening and asking that question. I think the other thing is, we just, for ourselves and others, it may not be something that looks like an actual action, but it's to give others grace and to give ourselves grace, because I do think, we can get in our heads, and if we're dealing with something, everyone around us is dealing with something. And I think sometimes if we model the way we want others to maybe treat us with that level of grace, I think sometimes, without saying anything, you might start to see a shift or an energy thing between others on your team. So it's just something right now I think we do need to just, as much as we can, is to give others grace and just try to be the person that we want someone to be for us, if we have the capacity to do that. I think those small little things can actually be more helpful, and maybe then even open someone else that asking the question to open up to you and to and make them feel like they're safe enough maybe to share.
That's great. And what I'm hearing from both of you is what really we need to keep in mind is that the people you're working with are your coworkers, but they're also full people, and demonstrating that care, having those conversations, just starting with a conversation, having those conversations about their full lives is also really important to creating that trust for a full relationship. There were many, many gems dropped today, and I want to thank you both for what you all shared, because this is something that's important. We spend about a third of our lives at work, and as much as we can, we should be working towards making that something that we truly enjoy and where we feel engaged and respected. I appreciate what you both shared. Thank you, Janae. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you to Sandra Garcia and the New York Urban League for hosting this conversation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.